got to about the age of 6 and 7, my parents separated, and my mum had a breakdown. 1 minute she was in my life, and then she wasn't. She was in the hospital, or she moved around, and I had a very, it's a polite way, but tempestuous relationship. So I was quite a mixed up kid. So my teenage years at schooling were essentially a write-off. I was really, really angry, and I won that pitch.
Wow.
And I got that telephone call on the day that I took my son home from hospital. So it's like, well, now is the time. I'm doing this for you, mate.
Yeah.
No stopping me. I did that for a couple of years, and then polite client decided to stiff me for about 15 grand, and suddenly out of nowhere I had nothing. I felt like a massive failure. That was a really, really dark time. I felt I'd let him down. I'd let my dad down. The darkest places, because I thought I was going to be bankrupt. We'd lose the roof over our head. I remember thinking my son would be better off without me, because what sort of role model would I be? Because I was a failure.
96 men under 45 lost to suicide every week in the UK.
I mean, it's 3 times higher than women, and that's it's because men don't talk. That's why I ended up getting ill, going to those dark times, because God forbid I put my hand up and ask for help. Wasn't in my DNA. Saved my life, but him making me ill made me stop. Otherwise I probably wouldn't have stopped.
I believe everyone has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions. Okay, welcome to another episode of the podcast. My guest this week is an entrepreneurial, curious and creative thinker with a relentless passion and commitment for increasing the understanding of how social impact research, reporting, storytelling and commercially focused strategies can work together hand in hand. He's an award-winning and respected thought leader in the men's mental health and fatherhood field. His work has been showcased by the All-Party Parliamentary Committee on the Future of Fatherhood, the Department of Media, Culture and Sport, The Guardian, BBC World Service, Radio 4, Huffington Post and ITV. He's passionate about partnering with remarkable people and producing outstanding results and social impact. Delighted to welcome a good friend and the founder, Adolescence Soul.
You've been on LinkedIn, haven't you, Sam?
Dan Flanagan. How are you, mate?
I'm really well. This is a long time coming, so to see this wonderful setup and see how you've put together the things I listen to and I view is really intriguing. To see sort of you've shifted the curtain. That's how. So yeah, I am very curious, and you could call it nosy, but I prefer curious. Yeah,
Curious.
I'm really well. Thank you.
Listen, like you said, this has been a long time coming. It's been we've got to know each other a little bit over the last couple. It's been amazing, and what you've done with Adolescence Soul, as I'm a massive advocate for, and love it, and love to be part of it.
It was actually one of your podcasts that I listened to during lockdown, and you started talking about the birth stories of the kids and stuff like that, and I thought, oh, there's a Soulie. I didn't realise, and it was rather than this is this successful fella that does all this networking, does all that. I said, oh, there's one of my people there. And that's what actually, I think one of the reasons I initially reached out there, because where you were so honest about what you'd gone through, I found really surprising, and I wasn't expecting to hear that. I thought I was just going to get some sort of business knowledge and maybe some networking conversations and stuff like that. I was like, wow. And the fact that you were sort of brave enough to talk about the stuff that you'd gone through as an individual and as a family as well, I thought was incredibly commendable. So thank you.
Oh, mate, thank you. And like I say, I remember you reaching out during lockdown. We spoke about it. I just was the concept as a whole, just like I say, blow me away. We'll obviously delve into it and stuff as well as we go on. But it's an amazing community that you've built, and like I say, I feel very fortunate to be part of it. So look, we're going to jump straight in, mate.
Yep.
We're going to jump straight in. So let's start your story. Tell me what life was like growing up, and something. Tell me something about like those early years of growing up and what shaped who you are today.
Okay. Well, I was born in Catford in southeast London. We were there for the first couple of years of my life. Don't obviously remember a great deal about it. My dad was an architect, and we had a lovely big house there, and it had an old air raid shelter in the back of the garden, but. South East London at that time, we had a nice. It was quite an uncomfortable area because a couple of miles down the road, you had Millwall, and you had some race riots and stuff going on. So he'd worked very hard and didn't want us there. So we moved out to a place called Tunbridge Wells in Kent, and I was sort of looking back to this. The first few years were lovely. There wasn't. A great deal of money. My dad was working really hard setting up this new business. My mum had a couple of jobs. She also had 4 kids under the age of 10. So it was, without pleading the poverty card, things were tricky, but we were a lot better off than a lot of other people. And then we'd have sort of lots of weekends and holidays. We had a caravan down in a place called New Romney, down in Sussex, and that was lovely. We just packed the car up on a Friday. You disappear there, and that was, it's where the kids would just disappear all day. You'd go hunting in the fields, hunting in the beach. There was no adults around. It was pure freedom, and that was lovely. And then when I got to about the age of 6 and 7, my parents separated, and my mum had a breakdown, and she'd had a lot of problems, which obviously we weren't aware of, or certainly me. She was brought up in care in the 50s, had no family, and I think everything just got too much for her. My dad was always out working, and my whole world just went boom. And we're fortunate now that there's not so much of a stigma around there, and around mental health now, as we're sort of discussing. But back then there was, so sort of. 1 minute she was in my life, and then she wasn't. She was in the hospital, or she moved around, and I had a very, polite way of putting it, tempestuous relationship. So I was quite a mixed up kid. So when I could see her, she moved to London, so I'd spend my sort of week at school in Kent, and then the weekends I'd go and see her in London. She'd moved around, so you
lived with your dad?
I lived with my dad. My dad got custody of him, me, and my 3 sisters, who sort of 7, 8, and 9 years older than me. So he became basically a single father and running a business, and God knows how he coped. But nobody ever talked about it. There was this line we just do not cross. We just got on with it, and I can see how painful and traumatic that is now looking back. But it was just like, that's the situation. You get on with it. So it was really sort of difficult for him. So he'd sort of finish work and then come home and try and deal with. They were getting into 3 teenage girls and boyfriends and all of that, and me becoming very mixed up and very angry. So for this, the first part was almost angelic. What also happens is there was a property boom, so his business started flowing, really well. So suddenly, there was nice cars. Our house was full of habitat, furniture, and stuff like that. So we had all of that, but behind closed doors, there was always something missing. But again, we never really spoke about it. So it was going from that during the week to B&Bs or wherever my mum was living at the time. I learnt to play a role, because then I'd have to go into London and make friends with the kids around there.
Yeah.
So it was, there was a big sort of sociological change, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand it. So I learned to be who I need to be in there. Going forward, my teenage years at schooling were essentially a write-off. I was really, really angry.
From
the
split up.
No, nobody discussed it. Nobody actually asked me how I was or what he was doing. You know, there wasn't any idea of, there was no external family near us, and also it was only took into my 40s I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia.
Right.
So traditional education didn't work for me. So I was all seen as a massive troublemaker, very disruptive influence, because I would question. Because it just doesn't make sense. You know, why are we doing this? Which is not what you want in a pupil.
Yeah. But that's really frustrating, like listening to hear that. And I often talk about the education system on the podcast, as you probably know. But like so, and Leon Taylor, I've spoke to previously, who come on, and he was hyperactive and ADHD along those lines, but just really hyperactive. But so just didn't engage in a certain way, like you're saying. With the amount of people I've spoke to who have been diagnosed with dyslexia, and it's just actually I don't engage in that way with the curriculum that we've got in this country, and I just why are people still not listening to that? It
didn't seem there was actually. There's a very old episode of Grange Hill where one of the pupils gets. They diagnose him with dyslexia and is immediately left and has to go to a special needs school. You know, that's just how it was. You were that didn't make any sense to me because I was quite a bright lad anyway.
Yeah.
I was very engaged verbally, and I loved art and English, but things like maths and learning facts just didn't work for me. So I ended up leaving. I left school at 15 with no qualifications and no idea of what was going on. And that again was completely odd because my dad had gone to Oxford. He was a very, very bright lad, but I didn't fit in, and it didn't make sense. But I went back to college, did my GCSEs again, and in a better setting because I went to an all boys school it was quite tough. So again, you'd have to assume a role. You didn't want to be a SWAT, you didn't want to be this. So I'd be the class clown or whatever, just anything to get me in without people digging any deeper. Because of I unpacked it a few years ago, actually in counselling, the shame of the guilt of your mum's in the nut house. How the hell are you going to cope with that on the playground? Yeah. You're just not, so nobody knew. So if I'm that and I had nice trainers and stuff, people could only see that side of me. So it was.
So you played a role.
Yeah. A mask,
yeah.
as it's now sort of called, and you don't realise the tension that builds up. It's almost being secret school private eye, because you just can't let that role slip or that mask slip. Fortunately now I understand it a lot more, and I've got a better understanding and a lot of more sympathy. But I imagine it was incredibly hard for my dad as well. There was we talk about going to the playground now as dads and it being a bit lonely, but there were absolutely no other men in the play. Although I think there was occasionally one other lad whose dad was a postman that would, if he was on the early turns, he'd turn up. But the rest of it, nobody ever talked to my dad. We didn't have play dates. We didn't do any of that. The stuff that we see as normal and every day, it just didn't happen. There was always well, his mum's not here. She's probably a scarlet woman that's run off. And that was a terrible way to describe her, because that wasn't it. But if that's what people wanted to think, let them think that.
You described about that your feelings of sort of anger and stuff at that time. Was that directed more at your mum or your dad, or just at the situation in general? Or
everybody, if I'm honest. They'd always count it. I've always got red hair. He's got red hair temper. But no, I'd have a hair trigger temper. And I think the bottom line is that I wasn't being listened to, or wasn't being heard, or I didn't understand. And when my sisters were a lot older, I'd kind of have to almost assume they're old as a mini teenager. So I couldn't put my hand on, I don't really understand that, or I don't understand that. Oh yeah, I do. But in a 6, 7, 8-year-old's mind, I'd got completely the wrong end of the stick. But yeah, I think there was, probably a load of misjudged anger towards mum. I didn't understand what had gone on with her. Certainly wasn't sympathetic towards that. I would fight at a drop of a hat. You know, and I'm a peace and love merchant now. I'm so different.
This is what I mean. It's so interesting to hear you talk like that from the Dan that I know and have got to know over the last couple of years, and the complete opposite. Like the words anger and wouldn't come into my mind to describe you as an individual, like you said.
Yeah.
But so when did you feel that sort of started to change for you? Like, obviously coming out of school then at 15, and before you go back in, what was there a turning point for you? Do you think that?
No, I realised I had to stop fighting because I'd get into serious trouble. And also my sort of friendship groups changed, my interests changed. You know, I was very into music and the arts and stuff like that. So it wasn't till sort of much years later, because I was still wearing a mask, but I would wear a mask of whatever role I was then, you know, college student or whatever it needed to be. I was the cheeky, funny one who would always, you know, be relied on to do the stupid things that nobody else was brave enough or daft enough, should we say, daft enough to do. No, it was many years later, probably into my 30s, that I understood a lot more about myself, who I am, what I'm good at, and maybe not to learn to listen so much to those other people around me. So something we're going to sort of touch on a bit later is the advice that I would give to my teenage self, is not to listen to those people, because those people, most of them, are not important. You know, I go on Facebook now and I see people that I went to school with, and if they told me to do something, I'd do it. Or if they told me, I'd have this idea, and they go, oh, you can't do that, can you? I go, oh no, I can't. And now they're stuck in dead-end lives. And I'm thinking, why did I listen to you? Why did you have so much power over me?
Because is it like for kids ultimately, and it's still in society, there's almost that feeling of wanting to fit in some way, don't we? We need to be accepted in some way. Whatever it is that you feel you can do to fit into those environments and that social circles.
Yeah, absolutely.
That, like, you talk on here about sort of alcohol and drinking and stuff. There's that social culture around. I love a drink, I don't mind it, but there's that pressure then, especially from a bloke's point of view. You turn up, oh, what's the matter? You're not drinking. Why is that? Like, what's wrong? Like, what? I don't want to put this poison into me, and you're asking me what's wrong. But it is just the way society is, and that comes from the school playground, doesn't it? Right up until even still into adulthood.
The workplace. If you know, I didn't know what I kind of wanted to do. I didn't have a wide frame of reference, so I sort of immediately fell into sales because I was good at chatting. So that's why I just did telesales. So everything from those crazy, you know, like Sunday magazines, you get, do you want 12-month subscriptions to pottery dogs? Yeah, that would be me that was bugging you. Or went into publishing, and that was there was a magazine called Cranes UK. So I used to sell advertising in Construction Europe magazine. So just battering the phones trying to get half-page and quarter-page adverts out of people. Soul-destroying work.
But I tell you, like, I listened to something Stephen Bartlett said the other day on Diversity, and he done a thing that he posted on LinkedIn saying about actually telesales is probably the best skill that you could learn as in it as an entrepreneur, as just as an individual, whatever career that you want to go into, the things that builds resilience, like you say, constantly getting a million no's, but you'll get that one yes. And
how to deal with different people. People from very different backgrounds. It does. It bears a confidence, and not you again. Yeah, but I've got my governor just sat there, and if I'm not on the phones and I'm not selling, then I'll be sacked. So I kind of have to. So it does build a huge sense of resilience, and I sort of did that. And any number of jobs. I was a painter and decorator. I worked as a law clerk. Anything, I'd sort of live for the weekend. So as long as I had
Is that all through your 20s?
But pretty much till I was about 25, 26. I just cared about the weekend and partying. So as long as I had money for nice clothes and, to hit a few clubs at the weekend, that's all that really mattered to me and to my friends. That was, it was the early 90s.
And a lot of people in their 20s, you do that if you haven't, a job. Nowadays it's slightly different, and nowadays it's a little bit different, but I think back then, especially in your early 20s, just go and get a job, and that job is literally just to pay for me to have a good time. Not
that's it. There was no career path thing. But it was only a couple of years later I started working for an organisation called the Newspaper Licensing Agency, and what they did is they controlled the copyright on news articles for all of the sort of national newspapers. So it was telesales, but I'd have to phone up companies and see if they were infringing on copyright, which is a very painful job, believe me. But did you once photocopy that article? You did, right? Here's a £5,000 fine, or depending on whoever it was. But it's, part of that was I had a client base, and there was a lot of PR companies in there. And this was the early days of guerrilla marketing, so they'd do these crazy PR stunts, and I was sort of talking. I want to do that. How do I do that job? Tell me. I'd build these relationships, and constantly be asking them. I wasn't selling, but I was just, how do you do this? That sounds wonderful. Have you thought about doing this?
That's that curious mind. That
it really was. I thought that's. I hadn't had that frame of reference.
But that ignited something in you, did it? The marketing
absolutely.
side
There's something else out there. So I ended up. I did get sacked from that job.
Meant to be selling you asking a load of questions.
Yeah, I got
trying to get to know people.
I got sacked from a lot of jobs actually, and I left quite a lot because I got bored very easily. I was very good at interviews, but actually doing the job, when I realised how tedious and horrible it was. And then around that time, there was the younger brother of one of my old schoolmates had got a Prince's Trust loan to start a record label, and they'd started putting on a range of sort of early UK hip hop gigs. And I heard about it. I was like, oh no, just be a gang of kids. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, I'll try, and I'll go to the show, and they're packing in 400 or 500 people. And wow, I want a part of this. So I sort of turned my marketing brain on and volunteered for them. I sort of got to know the internet, got to know the very early days of social media. So it was sort of MySpace and forums and stuff. But I'd go on there, chatting about the latest record release, and suddenly they're getting orders from Japan or Australia, and I'm thinking, whoa, there's something here, but nobody knew what it was, and it certainly wasn't a business. And then I got a job I had to go back to night school because I realised the thing that was stopping me was not having qualifications. Right. So I needed to join the Chartered Institute of Marketing. Yeah. As soon as I had that on my CV, it would open doors. That's why I was being shut out. Yeah. So I went back to night school for a bit, got that on my CV, and almost immediately got a job. So I was the marketing manager for a PR agency, very high-end furniture. So the sort of stuff you'll see in Homes and Garden magazine and some Sunday Times, we would rep those. And then part of my brief there was to analyse all of our suppliers. So I was saying, they'd hired an SEO company. This is, maybe 20 years ago. Wow. So again, I made friends. I go, what is this? How do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do? and sort of taught myself so that I could talk to myself. We don't really need that agency anymore, because the agency had been really successful, signing up new business, but they just didn't have capacity to do the work. So I know how to do this now. I can do it and save us. So, okay, do it.
Brilliant.
That started being successful. I was like, why don't we start offering this to our clients? And he's like, no. The internet's just a fad. You just no. And I was like, bang, look, there is. And ended up building my own sort of department, as we say, and a business offering for digital marketing. So we were doing I was doing outreach, content, SEO, and actually had a really nice additional revenue stream. But I was still getting new clients. So it was happy days.
Yeah.
They didn't understand it, but those invoices could continuously go out every single month. And actually, there's another 30.
They didn't understand it, but they liked it.
Yeah, 30, 40 grand on the bottom line. We'll just let them get on with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was. But I think it's the thing. I've never done formal training. I'm curious. So
but that's a great way of learning. But that's a great. Do you not think there's something? It's a great way of learning, isn't it? And like you said, by being so curious, it will open doors, and you ask those questions, and you'll find out about something.
Yeah.
And if that, ignites something in you that you're passionate about, you then go and follow that, and you'll figure
that.
But
you need the time and space and support to do that.
Yeah, sure.
And you need somebody that will maybe support you to go and take those risks. So, okay, I've got 5 days a week, but what if I do all of this stuff in those 3 days and I work really, really hard? Can I have this bit of time to go and explore and maybe learn and make... Well, as long as the money's coming in and, we've got some nice clients, and then, yes, I'm really thankful to him, because he had quite an entrepreneurial way about him, my boss at that agency. So I was there for 4 years.
Yeah, okay.
And I'd built a nice little extra business for him.
And then you've worked in different roles in different marketing agencies, haven't you, and stuff like that. But then talk to me then about leaving some of them full-time role and actually starting, I guess, the first one.
Well, I was after that role, I moved down to Brighton. I'd met my now ex-wife and got out of Tunbridge Wells because it was a very small town.
Yeah, sure.
I knew everybody.
Yeah.
And again, there was still that level of masking, because they knew you from then, so you'd always have to be that person. Well, I sort of went online, discovered Wired Sussex, saw these great jobs and opportunities, and how Brighton was really bubbling. Yeah. And Brighton was an hour and a half from where I was living, so I want to move there. So I came down, had a couple of roles, became a sort of digital director of, again, a traditional PR agency. So I did exactly what I did for the other fella. Went over there and almost revolutionised their offering. But I realised I was probably doing 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
I was throwing in, but I was getting nothing back in return. And at the time, my dad was really ill as well. He'd got vascular dementia. So his world had been us and his business. And then he'd been sort of forced to retire. And he crumbled, like a lot of men, because they kind of lost his sense of being. So I had to travel back from Brighton one night a week, and then I don't drive, so I'd have to get the bus back in the morning. It was all really taking its toll. And then my wife announced that we were pregnant. So I was like, I got to do something different. So I jacked in and started my first sort of digital PR agency called Don't Believe the Hype, where I took SEO, I took social media as it was there, traditional PR and video. And I was saying to people, rather than, you paying invoices to that agency, and none of them ever talk to each other, because it's all about egos. Come to me, we'll do that one strategy, have that one sole focus, and join up the end. So I had some, very bright people that I'd met along the way, and I'd brought them in. So, Don't Believe the Hype, it flew. I had my first client within 3 weeks. There was actually a lovely memory where I went up against 4 or 5 other really established PR agencies for the Brighton Racehorse contract. And I needed a Gmail account at the thing. And I won that pitch.
Wow.
And I got that telephone call on the day that I took my son home from hospital. So it's like, well, now is the time. I'm doing this for you, mate.
Yeah.
No stopping me. I did that for a couple of years, and then in the series of 3 months, it was kind of all gone.
What happened with that?
A very polite client decided to stiff me for about 15 grand, and then there was 3 or 4 other clients. They just all dropped off for various reasons. Nothing that we'd done wrong. It just gone, and suddenly out of nowhere, I had nothing. And
how old was your son?
How old? He was under 1.
Wow.
And that was, I felt like a massive failure. That was a really, really dark time. I felt I'd let him down. I'd let my dad down, because if my dad could build a business, why couldn't I?
Yeah.
You know, I'd made all these promises to, you know, my wife and her family. Her family were very sort of against the idea of me going independent.
Yeah.
You know, didn't really trust or believe in me. And yeah, that took me to the darkest places, because I thought I was going to be bankrupt. We'd lose the roof over our head. I remember thinking my son would be better off without me, because what sort of role model would I be? Because I was a failure.
You went to that?
I went to that place, and that was tough. It was horrifying, but
What got you at that from
that I
place?
got some counselling.
Okay.
And picked up, and also I had a.
Was you talking to people at the time? Because I guess that's what we're alluding to for that whole thing. You mentioned it at the beginning, the fact that actually we don't, as men, we bottle things up and we take that pressure on, because there's still in our heads, and the pressure we put on ourselves to become providers.
Yeah.
Is that then if something happens and you're not achieving that, like you said, that feeling of failure, and
it was horrible. But it was actually I phoned my dad, and we didn't really have open conversations. Our relationship was very much based on banter. You know, we'd take the mickey out of it. That was how he showed his love. And I sort of opened up and I said, I'm screwed. And he said, don't worry, I've been there. You'd be surprised. You know, he went through 2 recessions in the sort of construction industry. And he said, don't worry. So popped a couple of grand in my account. He said, look, I'll cover you. Just take a break and then go and get another job. So that's what I did. I was able to go and get a job in a sort of a big media company and take the skills that I had into that, which was great because somebody else was paying the bills.
Yeah.
And I could just learn and do all these other wild and wacky ideas for major name clients. So I had Barclay cards on my book. I had the White Stuff, the fashion label. I did some really interesting stuff with a group of blind bloggers for Visit Wales, where we took them on a sound seeing. So rather than going sightseeing, we went on a sound thing. So what does Wales sound like? Did that for 18 months, but I didn't fit in.
Is that thing of, just take me back to that, your sort of minds. How long did that period last? Of you obviously you closed the business before you sort of come out of that and then got that next job?
Probably a couple of months. I hit rock bottom, but I was still getting up in the morning and trying to do another deal because I had responsibilities. Somebody had to pay the bills. My ex-wife, she was still on, coming out maternity leave and stuff like that. So I've always been able to get a job. I've never been shy of hard work.
Yeah. But
it was, if I'm honest, I think I had some kind of breakdown because I just couldn't focus or concentrate, or even, there's a couple of times writing 2 or 3 emails a day. That would just exhaust me. And she'd come back and go, so what have you done today to change the situation? Well, I've done that. Well, is that enough? And I know it's not enough, but I don't know what. But
that's more pressure put. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think they meant to do
it. No. But I guess from their point of view, they're as worried as as you
terrified.
are. Yeah. That we're going to lose our house. Are we going to? Is this a position? And they want you to solve it, and you need to get out there and solve it.
I told them I'd solve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was thankfully I, family that I could go to.
Yeah.
But no, I never talked about stuff. Don't be ridiculous. And then I was at this agency for a couple of. My dad passed away during that time, and that I did a typical bloke thing. I didn't talk about that. And then sort of 6 months into it, it hit me, and I broke. It was strangely, my son gave me chicken pox for the second time. So I was forced to take 2 weeks of work. I didn't take any. I think I had a couple of days off when my dad passed, but I got clients to work for. But it was in that 2 week period that I was sort of confined to barracks. I played with my son more than I'd done in months, because I'd leave really early in the morning, I'd get home late at night. If I was lucky, I'd put him to bed and then have him on a Saturday, and he was probably 2 or 3 at that time. And that was very lonely and challenging, and we moved over to Worthing. I didn't know anybody. Still felt like a massive failure, but then where I'd become ill with a chicken pox, I thought, I love this boy. I want to spend more time with him. He needs me to run. So I ended up quitting that job, and I said, right, I'm just going to have a couple of months off to recover and deal with the grief and the stress. We had some money in the bank, so it wasn't the pressure was off for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then after a couple of weeks, my entrepreneurial brain kicked in, and I'm thinking, well, I've got to do something here. So I got a client who was a music promoter, so I started doing promotion for gigs and interviewing acts like Fun Loving Criminals and Ocean Colour Scene. So I said, now I was a music journalist, and I was getting paid for it. So it's like,
love that,
living it. But the beauty of that, I was able to go to nursery school and drop the boy off or volunteer there, which was weird because the kids weren't used to seeing a man in that setting. So I felt like a rock star. Like, and he was, and I've sort of never been back since. That job led to a load of others. I started blogging around that time because I'd also realised that there was a huge range of mummy bloggers out there, but there was nobody telling our story. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write. Maybe my grammar's not the best, but I could tell a good story. Started blogging. The blog actually took off really well. It ended up being a magazine which had 18 different dads from around the UK writing.
Wow.
That became the world's first agency of dad, because we started to have brands that suddenly saw the potential of working with this dad audience that they couldn't tap into, and they were sending me creative briefs, and they were just awful. Really, they really poor narrative about being dad. We can't dance. We're only interested in beer and football, and I'm not having this. So I wrote something called the Dadifesto, where it was a challenge to the advertising agency to not assume, we're all like Peppa Pig stag. We're not all imbeciles. And off the back of that, I worked with Disney, I worked with Marvel, I worked with BMW. So that sort of grew, and then I've got this other little business that I've just created, but I'm able to, do the mum and toddler groups. But again, feel really lonely because it's like, what are you doing here on a Monday morning? Haven't you got a proper job? Or he's here to have an affair, or the stories. He's probably a paedophile because he's here to play with kids.
Hopefully, there's a shift, and by creating the group that you have and doing what there is that shift, but there is still that stigma a little bit attached to it. I think it's more acceptable in the fact that there's more spaces for men to speak more openly about stuff and be a little bit more vulnerable, and there's not that stereotype that we've had to when you go back to the 80s or whenever and before. But there is still that narrative out there, isn't there? And it's still underlying. Yeah.
As a bloke, what am I doing here as a Monday morning? Shouldn't I be working, and shouldn't I be doing this and that? And I thought, Well, no, because I don't have to. I'll just work. There's times when, my son's in bed or he's around, rather than doing 9 to 5, being pinned to somebody else's desk. Didn't have to do it. So, Dad Soul sort of. I had the magazine and the agency there. I created something called Top Rocking Beats, which was a range of afternoon raves because I got fed up again of not having a social life. In Worthing, they had these beautiful old theatres, but they had no entertainment for young families. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to hire them, bring in some old DJ mates, bring some soft play in, and have it large between 4 and 7.
I love that. I just want to touch on that. I'm just thinking about listening to your story and listening to you talk about it. I'm wondering, like, with the soul and the passion that you've obviously got from it. Obviously, it come around by you having them couple of weeks with your son. But is there also a link, maybe? I'm just speaking out loud, I guess, around it with your dad and the fact that he obviously,
payback.
For him, like a legacy almost for what he'd done for you at that young age.
It really, there was no support there, absolutely none whatsoever. I don't know how he coped, and he probably didn't cope very well, but we never saw it. There were single parent groups at the time, but that tended to be mums that wore dungarees that voted C and D, as I do. But my dad was a very successful businessman. He couldn't go to groups like that, and he's the idea of organising a dad's play date probably would have been the room behind the pub. Let's put Star Wars on there, and all the fellas will just go in here and have a few pints. Occasionally 5 hours later pop there, nobody's dead, fine. So it's a payback, because I realised the sacrifices that he had to make, and rather than being ashamed of the past, actually that really did shape me. So my dad was Grandad the Soul, I
love that. I mean, look, as we're sort of just touching on that sort of period, and you've obviously mentioned, there's a few statistics that I took out, obviously a couple of bits, like with 6 million dads in the UK with dependent children, but this is one that, and by having these conversations, this is one that killed 96 men under 45 lost to suicide every week in the UK.
Terrifying.
That is absolutely mind-blowing for me. When you hear that type of statistic, you go, why is that happening?
But you also think that's me. That's him. That's most of my pals. Gone. It's 3 times higher than women, and that's it's because men don't talk. We're not set up to talk genetically, historically, maybe sociologically. So it is about changing that narrative. And I don't say all of those, obviously, guys under 45 are dads, but there's a huge pressure on there. But we're men. We'll just take it, just chuck it onto us, and we'll deal with it. We've got big shoulders, and doesn't it? It's what goes on behind the scenes and internally. That's why I ended up getting ill, going to those dark times, because God forbid I would put my hand up and ask for help. Wasn't in my DNA. No. And I think so many of us are unfortunately like that still.
It's because there's still, and as much as it's talked about more now, but there's still that, it's intrinsic, and especially I guess our generation, that intrinsic view, that vulnerability, being a bit vulnerable, crying in front of mates, or being a bit vulnerable and actually asking for help is seen as a bit of a weakness. You go, no, of course I'm all right.
Yeah.
And we put on, like you said, you mentioned about masks, we put on these masks on a regular basis where we go out. Social media, we're guilty of it. We have big smiles on, and I'm guilty of it. We do that. And actually deep down, you're screaming out going, I'm really struggling at the moment. But there's this image, and I've got to portray a certain image, and I've got to wear that certain mark.
The people that rely on you fall. And you can't do that, so it's almost a sense of, they don't mean to do it, but there's an additional pressure on you, because you've got to be the strong provider, the one that put your arms around the wife and kids and protect them. So if you're not up to the job, you're not a man then, are you really?
See that. Yeah, it's that, and that's the that's the problem, isn't it? That's where it, I guess, so deep down is that thing of looking at it and going, we've got to create more spaces. We've got to have these conversations. We've got to be able, what you've created with Dadless Soul. The thing that I've found amazing about it for me is not just the fact that it's twofold for me, and I guess one is that on a Saturday I do come down and it's just me and the kids, and I can sit there and I play Lego with them, and I'm not distracted really by work. I'm just there with them, and we're having a bit as a dad, and that is why I'm there. And everyone else, even people within the business community who I see on networking events, they're there in a different capacity. They're there as dad, and that's the great thing. That's a magical thing.
You mentioned it earlier, didn't you? So you see a very different side to them, and actually you build a much stronger relation, because you go, you're looking a bit tired. It's because of this. But actually, if you saw them at golf or wherever, no, it's fine. Pressure of business, but you know.
Yeah. Because that's a different master we wear.
Exactly. So it's the more human face.
100%.
Of it. So it doesn't matter if you've got 6-figure salary or we've got dads that are forced to use food banks. Yeah. Does not matter. You come through those doors. Those 3 letters, that DAD, or you're a stepdad, or you're a male carer, or foster carers, dads that gone through the adoption process. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Those masks come off, do these fun activities, but also at any point in time, suddenly you'll be in a conversation with somebody who 10 minutes ago was a stranger, and they're pouring out their heart to you, and you go, okay, so I'm allowed to do this now. It's not. We don't sit in a circle. That's where, unfortunately, mental health services traditionally, they only look to things at point of crisis, and this is intervention beforehand, but without, so imagine walking into a pub and going to a group of middle-aged men. Right, anybody lonely? No, don't be ridiculous. Anybody isolated? Anybody? No, the match is on. Shut up. Actually, we are, and I am, and I've been there myself, so I understand the signs and the signals. So what we're able to do is look at that as a wide thing and break down all those boundaries. It's intimidating walking into a strange place where you're not going to know anybody. You're going to feel like a Billy No Mates. You're going to think everybody knows each other, and you're going to, and even if you're really confident, like somebody like you, that's going to be tricky. If somebody is even more sort of socially anxious, or bottom line, maybe doesn't have any friends. Their friends are on Facebook. There's nobody to go, do you fancy a pint? Do you want a cup of tea? This thing here, or this thing here, these things, I don't know how to fix. And I'm racking my brains, and I'm waking up in the middle of the night, or, I maybe opening up that second or third bottle of wine of an evening, just so I can sleep. But, it's all right. No, it's not, because the long-term consequences of that are extremely damaging for you, and then your role as a partner, as a provider, as a father. So it's sort of, the conversations I've been almost blessed to have with people, it's absolutely nuts, because if you met these people, tall, good-looking, nice house, open door. And it all come traumatic birth stories, or struggles with addiction, guys that is coming to terms with serious levels of childhood sexual trauma. Never spoken about him, but actually in here they can do, and there's no judgment. There's no, there's a shoulder to cry on. We do have existing pathways if people need them, but it more is like, pull up a chair. Right, what's on your mind? How are you? How are you? And if they don't answer, I'll tell them, and I'll go, well, I'm this. How can you do that? You can't be struggling with that, Dan. You're this, and this. Shall I, like we said earlier, we literally pull back the curtain and see what goes on backstage?
I just wanted to say something about one of our sponsors, Plus X. I've been a member for over 2 years now, and the podcast studio here is the home to the County Business Talks podcast. Brighton is the perfect location to create, build and grow a business, with role models and inspiration at every turn. It's no wonder that this has become a hotbed of innovation and entrepreneurialism. So if you're building your future here on the South Coast, there's no better place than Plus X Brighton. 7 stories of cutting-edge space, expertly designed to support all kinds of business, from newly started freelancers to large established corporates. With flexible, dynamic environment ranging from co-working desks to private studios, their specialist facilities include a state-of-the-art prototyping workshop and media suites. They also maintain a community-focused event schedule and offer all kinds of business support programs. Built for anyone who wants to make a change, PlusX has everything you need. Find out more at www.plusx.space. Okay, back to the episode. Yeah, and this, because it's even like the WhatsApp group, like just the level of support on there. Like someone posts something on there about a question about something that they're struggling with, and straight away people are there answering, whether it's or like you say, just being in the environment. The only thing I haven't done is one of the socials yet, which I'm planning to do soon. But even like I say, just building those relationships and having some conversations when you're there with the kids and stuff like that. It's just you just feel like there's that you feel part of a community.
That's exactly, and it is all shapes and sizes. We had one lad who he was in his 40s, married a couple. He was come to terms with his sexuality, and he came out, right? And his world exploded, and he was like, I had a big, heated discussion with my wife and told her everything, and I think the kids heard more than they should have done. The kids were 8 and 12, and I don't want to do. And that was on our sort of private Facebook, and the amount of support that just came out, mate, you've got to be yourself, you've got to do this, because ultimately, if you live a life, then your kids are never going to know you, never going to know the real you. And if you said that out loud, guys come out to a bunch of geezers. You would think typically it would be very, very different. Or, dads whose partners are struggling with the menopause, or maybe they've got kids that are, reassigning their genders. Traditionally, we don't know that type of stuff. And to be able to go, this is happening, and I'm trying to do the right thing, but that bit doesn't make sense, or I'm still, if I'm honest, I'm not sure about this thing, because it's not how I was brought up. But that's all right. You can say that out loud, and then, but actually, here's Jimmy over there that's been through a similar thing. Why don't you sit down and have a brew with him, and the sort of wisdom of the village.
I love because look, I've spoke about it many times about Luca, and Luca's very gender fluid, and look, I always I was a boy who was brought up in Dagenham. Went to the roughest school in the borough, and you look at it and go, actually, my brain, when he first started, questioning his gender as young as, like, he was 18 months, 2 years old when he first started wearing Sienna's clothes and like that. And my brain automatically went to a place of, if I'd done that when I was at school, I'd have got killed. I wasn't bullied. I was very lucky not to be bullied, but I see people that were, which was horrible. And there was a fear factor then.
You want to protect him?
Yeah, I want to protect him. I was like, and there was a fear factor, but ultimately, what he's taught me in the first 7 years of his life has been the most mind-blowing experience for me as an individual. I like to think myself open-minded, but you look at that, and the one thing that we've alluded to on here already, and we speak about all the time, is actually living the life true to ourselves is the one key thing that we've got to do. If the biggest regret of the dying is that I've not lived a life true to myself, if that's the biggest regret of the dying, that's ultimately what we've got to find. And once we've found that, that's where fulfilment, contentment and happiness comes from. So he's recognised that at such a young age, which is mind-blowing, and you go, wow.
It's a learning experience for everybody, isn't it? Going and questioning those long-held beliefs. And sort of very similar. I mean, kids in the playground, if they were slightly different, bang. The bullies would be on them, let alone enough to be brave enough or confident enough to say, look, this is me. Actually, if you've got a problem, it's your problem, it's not mine. See you later. So that's incredibly admirable, and I think our kids do have a lot to teach us about that level of acceptance. I took my son we took part in the Pride parade, and we were there, and we were just having a competition. Oh, best dressed, loving that outfit, loving it, and not one did he think, oh, that's weird or that's not. It was just that, And actually, had I said something else, he would have been straight on me. Saying, you can't say that, Dad, that's wrong. Do you know why?
Yeah.
And it's like, brilliant. So it's nice that we're there to teach and protect our children, but actually, if you think about it, it's the roles reverse.
Yeah,
they're protecting and teaching us.
It is, honestly, what he's taught me about the world in the first 7 years is amazing. And like I say, I'd like to think of myself as an open-minded, very liberal type, but there was some, I guess, own insecurities, own fear factors that come into play with me that I did question something. What are we doing? And we still question, are we doing the right thing? And me and Kelly talk about it often. But, of course, one thing that we come back to is that is he happy? Yes. Yeah. Is he being who he wants to be? Yes. And a different person on different days, and that's his prerogative, and that's his what. And I think.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing, basically. Yeah. And I think we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. But look, we talked obviously about community, and certainly the power of the community that you've built up here. But I guess over some of the challenges just running a business in general, but within the community is something that we're both passionate about communities in general. But what did you see during lockdown with dads and within the community, and maybe some challenges that they were facing?
I think lockdown obviously was a horrible situation, but I think it provided some great learning for people. So there was a lot of dads that suddenly had to work from home. So they saw a lot more of their kids. They saw a lot more of the day-to-day stuff that maybe they weren't part of, and how hard their partner works. Keeping it, you've got the traditional relationship where dad goes out, mum stays at home. But also, I think they understood because we had to be educators and we had to be teachers and we had to be this, and
I'm not a teacher, mate.
No.
I found that out quite quickly.
So I think the first couple of days I'd mapped out this schedule for my son. I was like, Latin then, Latin. And by the end of it, he's like, I'm not having this. So okay, what do we do? And I just said, right, okay, what we're going to do? We're going to do music. Got out my old records. I said, just pick some stuff and we'll play it, and I'll tell you about it, and I'll tell you about the artist. So that was it. That was music appreciation history.
Love that.
But yeah, for the rest of the dads, obviously there was a lot of people that were. It was financially terrifying as well. The businesses stripped away. Yeah. They couldn't get furlough, which I couldn't. It was shocking, but I think, because you're able to spend a lot more time with your kids, you realise, well, then that's how you want it to be. Yeah. So actually, I don't want to go back to this 9 to 5 commuting.
Did you see quite a big shift then within the community of dads that are having those points of reference where they actually?
I think it was it came up. We had some, it also gave some real troubles because everybody else, Dad to Soul is a voluntary organisation, so 2 of my directors left, and probably 98% of the volunteers left, and I had to. We were losing money. We had nothing, so it's like, do I even continue with this? And I had a word with myself. I had a few tears in the shower a couple of nights, thinking I can't cope with all of this, and co-parenting during lockdown had its own range of potential challenges. But I thought, I believe in this. Now more than ever, I need to be here. So I ended up sort of rebuilding Dad to Soul, and we did some great, online events. We did the world's first international play date, where we had dads in Kenya, the States, Germany, all coming together. And that was through, some of the online networking stuff that popped up during COVID. I just got talking to this lady in, I think, Switzerland, Susie. He said, you need to speak to this guy called James in the States that feels very similar. And we did, and we just put together this international community. And it was like, great, there's a black kid in Chicago talking to a white kid from Sussex about what lockdown looks like for them. And then the dads were doing a similar thing here. I don't know, how can I work? When I've got a 2-year-old using me as a human climbing frame all the time. So I think there was a lot of I think it was a gift where you spend that more time with your kids, and it opened up the door and maybe pushed the dial on flexible working and hybrid working for pretty much most organisations. I know it's different if you're a bus driver. You've got to be at the bus.
Yeah.
But for other people, you don't have to be in this office. You can work quite effectively. Then maybe work a bit too much if you're at home. But yeah, do the school runs, go for a play date game. You know, those football games or those school plays that I probably would have had to miss out, which I did previously because I was in a culture where I think I was one of the only parents in the team to try and get time off. So, part-timer.
Oh, really?
It's a couple of hours a week. And now I'm angry for those people that are still in that situation, because if you give from an HR point, if you give your team that flexibility, they'll pay it back in spades.
Because that again, the culture piece that I always talk about within an environment, looking after your staff and putting people for, and that doesn't have to be financial, does it? It doesn't have to be, oh, we're going to give you more money, we're going to give you a pay rise, all those things. That flexibility within an organisation. And like you said, I think lockdown highlighted that for so many people, that you could go, actually, I do love my work and I do love what I'm doing, and I'm, whether it be your own business or whether I'm grafting, I'm putting the hours in. Actually, the important thing is what I'm doing it, because we often question ourselves, don't we? We go, oh, I'm doing it for them. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm working an 18-hour day, because I'm doing it for them. No, I'm doing it for them. But actually, all they want is you to spend time with them and be present.
It really, really is. It reminded me, like being a kid, I was really into Lego, and I'd build these houses and I'd put it on top of the telly so my dad would see it when he came in, because he was an architect. So he built these amazing buildings, but he was so time poor that there wasn't the opportunity to maybe get on his hands and knees and play with me. But it was my way of connecting. Now the world is different, and it really is. You know, time is the biggest thing. It's the biggest enemy to you, but it's also the biggest gift that you can give yourself and those, you know, in your circle. I'm here for you. I need to listen to you, or you know, we're just going to go down the beach and be daft. We're going to chase some seagulls for half an hour. There was a moment actually when I started volunteering in my son's play school, and we took the kids down to beach school. We were very fortunate to live very close to the beach, so I had a group with the actual staff. Obviously, they didn't let me give and take 30 kids out on my own. But I convinced them there was dinosaurs on the beach, and we went dinosaur hunting. And it was like, this is 9:30 on a Monday morning. I think traditionally I would have been in a status meeting for Barclaycard. Actually, I'm doing this, and the sheer amount of joy that I was getting, and these kids, and it's like, no, that's my dad. That's my dad.
I love that. Love that.
You know, it's beautiful, and it's a memory that I hold very dear, very dear indeed.
I want to, as we're talking about the whole word up, I wonder, you've gone from a period where you know, because of an illness, then you took that time. That was a little bit of a wake up call. Going, actually, I want to spend more. This is where I want to spend more time. Where are you now? Because you still run a lot of different projects, and you got, you know, every time me and you talk, we could spend a million ideas. We're spinning. Oh, what about this? And we've both got that again. That back to that curiosity, that ambition, and stuff. So, do you feel yourself having to check in sometimes? Where are you now in regards to that work-life balance side of it?
Better now. I've just for the last 2 years, I was also had 4 days a week with a strategic agency that we know, and then I was doing dadless old in the evenings and weekends, and trying to be a dad, trying to be a partner, and I had very little time for myself. There was a guy I know called Mark Slade, and incredibly creative dude. You know, he set up festivals, he'd done this mad TEDx talk and stuff, and I phoned him and I said, look, I'm doing all this stuff, but I'd still need some more money. You know, I've got the bills are rising and stuff like that. And he'd read this book called 4,000 Weeks, And that's basically the amount of time you've got on this earth if you're lucky. So rather than doing a dozen things, maybe just do one thing really well. And that's he'd given up his stuff to get this very cool job, but just focus on that. And I thought, well, if you can do it, maybe I could. So I looked at my schedule and realised I got, outside of all of these other buckets, I had about 12 hours free. And I had 12 different projects on the go. No wonder I wasn't getting anywhere, because I just simply didn't have the time. Fortunately, now I've been able to leave that role, so I'm dadless holding full time.
Amazing.
And at the beginning of the year, I just sat down with my schedule and said, okay, what do I need to do? Right, I need to get healthier. So I booked in my C-swim, booked in my boxing classes like we were talking about earlier, booked in hot pod yoga, booked in the time I need to spend with my son, my date nights with my amazing partner. Right, they're the foundations. Right, everything else comes after that. So if they stay in place, everything. And before,
have you got them in the thing?
Yeah, absolutely. They are. There was a chap, Mark, the chap that created Netflix, Mark, not Mark Raymond, Mark something or other. But he wrote something on LinkedIn the other day. He said, even through the, from the early days of Netflix right the way through.
I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd have a hard deadline for 5 o'clock on a Tuesday for a date night, and that's what kept him sane. So, previously, in the last couple of years, it has been exhausting. I've almost been caught on a hamster wheel, but I couldn't get off that because I had people again relying on me. So maybe I didn't check in with myself. It's only now that I've been able to stop and reassess. I can't do that anymore. I can't do that. I need to say these are my non-negotiables, and I can fit everything else around that. But normally, you would put you almost work as the bottom line, and then. Ben, it's like, nah, flip it.
Because I get that, and it's something I'm trying to do a lot more. Like my thing this year was trying to do that a lot more, and I'm trying to look at it. I guess the problem sometimes, and it comes back to, unfortunately, but it comes back to the money side of it sometimes, doesn't it? Because you actually do go, and it's such a catch-22 situation. Because you go, actually, I need to work that bit. I need to keep that going. I need to keep that going because that brings that bit of money in. So I'm going to keep that plate spinning so that I've got that money, and that's that little bit of security that keeps me alive, and that takes that pressure off. Yeah, because if you drop that plate, you go, okay, I'm going to take that plate and I'm going to just do these things. Then you reassess and go, oh, actually, there's an additional pressure there because actually now I haven't got the money coming in. So and that's where there's such a disparity. I guess where I'll get drawn back in sometimes, I guess, to those type of feelings where I look at it and go, oh, no, I'm still striving and got the ambition and still on the hamster wheel. I struggle to get off it because I think, oh, but if I just, and I know as I'm talking to you now and I'm saying, oh, just get to that point and then that will be all right.
You're not going to be satisfied when you get to that point because then you're going to just raise the bar. Even we're very, determined, ambitious individuals. We are driven, but it is about, look, if you don't look after your health, you're not going to be able to get that money in anyway. If your family decide they've had enough of you and leave you, you got nothing. So actually, by swapping those priorities and also having I think this is a key thing about breaking out of your different social circles and talking to very different people with very different points of view, that maybe you could draw some experience down. Go, look, you've got all these assets. How do you sweat those more? Rather than doing more with 20 other things, you do those 3 things, but you do them so well, become an expert in that field, but you do it on your terms. And that's terrifying. Absolutely terrified to take that jump from the secure world or the corporate world, as I did, into freelance. I had to do it because I don't know if I'd still be here if I was caught in that world. And that's the bottom line.
And I love, and even tell me, if we went back then to that mindset of how you felt when you was in your darkest point, when you saw yourself as a failure. Do you where you are in your head now, can you look back at that and realise that that was just a learning curve, that was a period, or do you still, if you go back to that point, do you still see that point as a failure? That business?
I don't see it as a failure because the raw feelings of the time. I feel that, well, now I look back, I'm a failure because I didn't speak up and I didn't speak out, and I could have probably saved myself a whole heap of trouble by, because I've got a great support network. I've got people that do care and they do love me, but this pardon my French, but this bullshit men mentality that just get up a bit earlier, just do a bit extra, have that blitz spirit.
Because it's that glamorised hustle culture, isn't it?
I bought into that massively. Even years ago, I remember talking to somebody and said, "Oh, yeah, did 8 hours this week, Greg?"
Where it is a
idiot.
Badge of honour.
Why?
Yeah. Being busy is a badge of honour. You go, I'm busy. How are you? I've been so guilty of that. I check in with myself as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
About that, because that is like that. How are you? I'm busy.
Yeah.
Being a busy fool.
That's exactly. Be less busy. So now I can look back and go, well, actually I was able to create a business out of nothing, have a Gmail account, beat loads of other established agents, including my ex-employer, which was a wonderful satisfaction feeling. If I'm on, I don't want to be bitter about this, but it was just like, should have treated me a little bit nicer. And the stuff that I learned and the people that I've met. So now I think, weirdly, it's all part of some jigsaw. I'm a big believer in the universe has a plan, right? And things happen for a reason. They could be some really, really horrible things, or they could be some amazing things. But there's a plan there, and you've just got to open yourself up to it and take that leap of faith sometimes. But yeah, when you've got all of the weight of the world on your shoulders, and probably even more than that, it's the weight that you put upon yourself. But then if you think, right, have a conversation with yourself. What would you, if you were somebody else looking at Sam Thomas, what would you advise? Go, stop. Just take that breath for a bit, and maybe get some different conversations going, so you break that hamster wheel cycle. Because that's what we are very guilty of, getting in. Can't stop. It's got this, and it's when you stop. I was forced to stop with chickenpox. I was iller than I'd been in a long time, but it gave me the opportunity to play hide and seek with my son. And all these daft things. He loved it. He's got a horrible sense of humour because he was massively taking the piss. I'd give Daddy chicken spots. But
cheers.
If anything, he sort of saved my life. But him making me ill made me stop. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have stopped. And then coming to terms with the grief and everything else, I would have continued until I was broken and maybe broken beyond repair. That was a warning sign, but I needed some drastic intervention. So I think that was the plan. But that means, I was so tired and stressed, my immune system was shot to bits.
It's interesting, like listening to you talk, like where you are now as well, and looking at actually having those opportunities to check in and go. I love the way that you've said, almost flipping it on its head where you are now. Like, of course, like giving up or coming away from that strategic role, going, I'm at Dad LaSalle now, I'm going to do that as a full-time thing. As I'm going to do that, I'm not going to get caught in this hamster wheel again. I'm going to create X, Y and Z. These are some non-negotiables. My own physical and mental health I'm going to look after. Time with my family, which is the most important. Surrounding myself with the people I love, and then the other stuff will come on top of that. And
again, it's a hard way to look at it. But it's about that, it's cliche, but it's being the change that you want to be. Okay, if you've got a blank sheet, babe, you can. But actually, if you've only got 5 hours, because you want to go to sports day or you want to do that or stuff like that, you make those 5 hours count. If somebody said, you've got 80 hours to do, I'm going to do this, and you go, nah, I've got to do this. This is what brings the pennies in. This is what, fills my cup with joy. You balance it. I'm still very guilty, going full-time Dad LaSalle from the sort of start of this month, the pressure's on because I've got to make sure the funding's there for me to continue that. So I have been guilty, I think we mentioned off air, for booking up meetings. I'm kind of booked solidly into February already because all these opportunities are now going.
Just because naturally how your brain works, especially when, and it's hard as well to balance it out when you're passionate about something.
Yeah.
If you've got ambition and you're passionate about something and you're driven, it's hard to not get excited about it and go, especially when you don't necessarily then see it as work and you go, oh, it's just part of.
There's a blurred line there, which is
That's hard, isn't it?
That's absolutely. If you enjoy it, when I was putting on the afternoon raves, they were 3 months of really hard. But I was going, there's 1,200 people here, and my good mates are DJing and doing. I've seen all these people having a wonderful time. This makes me feel good. But the come down afterwards, that adrenaline would just drop, and it's about the legacy as well. I'm in no means an expert, but I think now, because I've done all these other things and I failed, and I've learnt, and I've succeeded, and I've learnt, I'm in a better position. I'm a hair's breadth away from turning 50, and I'm more confident and happy than I think I've ever been. I've got an amazing relationship with a lovely supportive partner. I've got a good group of pals. I've got a social life, and I can do the things that maybe I was scared of doing because of those huge range of imposter syndrome and all those common things. You can't do that, and you can't do that, and you can't do that. And look, you tried that before and you failed. Let other people do that sort of thing. Just shut up and stay in your box. And now it's like, no. I'm that horrible, troublemaking kid as I was as a teenager, but now I can do it with a social purpose, and I can shake things up in the mental health industry and talk to charities or GPs, or when we were up at our research being used at the House of Parliament. That was nuts, absolutely nuts. And they say, okay, you're the expert in this. Nah, not me, mate. No. But I put the time in. Yeah, absolutely. I've done my 10,000 hours. Absolutely. Wow. And there's the experience and the credibility that comes with that, and the opportunities.
It's strange, isn't it? We still, as individuals, I think it's in our nature to actually, that external validation that we get sometimes from social media, absolutely. Sometimes just from other people. Yeah. Like you said, someone else says to you, "Oh, you're the expert. You're brilliant. You go and do that," and you're like, "I'll get that."
Absolutely.
You think, but it's then, like you said, that learning curve from, whether they be our failures or our experiences, whatever they look like, they all shape us into where we are and the type of person we are.
I'm a massive believer. I'm still probably hypercritical on myself. I'll see a video or a photo of one of our great events and loads of happy faces. Oh, there's a crisp packet on the floor there. That's where my eyes will be drawn.
Sorry, mate, I was meant to pick that up on Saturday.
Not this wonderful thing, but I'm learning. I'm learning because nobody else notices. Nobody actually cares. Yeah. They're focusing on having a good time and making friends. That's important. The crisp packet in the corner, or you're looking a bit tired there, or your beard's got a bit greyer. Doesn't matter. Really doesn't. Nobody cares.
And I guess the beauty of what you've created, what you are doing, that. And the impact that you're having on society as a whole, on the impact you're having on thousands of dads that you're supporting, is from a fulfillment, contentment, and purposeful feeling within yourself. Must.
It is really good. I know it's where for all those years where I didn't fit in, and it didn't make sense. Now it makes sense. So it's like you were born to do something, born to all that nonsense, all of those other things where I just felt, I felt like an outsider for quite a lot of my life for, some of the reasons we discussed. And wearing those masks, now I can take that mask off and go, this is a community for the other outsiders. So we're no longer outsiders. And that's lovely because I can be, walking around the street and I'll spot a Soli. Or there's that, and then I go, well, that guy's in New Zealand. You know, that guy's in the Czech Republic or Germany, and something we've done or something we've written or video has resonated with them, and they're thousands of miles away. That still makes my head spin.
Wow.
You know, but it's a good feeling because from having me being sort of brave enough to stick my flag in the ground, going, no, I don't want to go to mother and baby groups anymore and feel like an outsider. I don't want to feel like a failure as a father. I want some friends, you know, and I want friends. Not to say the people I knew weren't my friends, but friends that I could be really, really honest with. Not that knew
Be your
from the
authentic
back of the
self.
raving days or that role or when I had that mask on, as I am now. And if they like me, love me and support me, that's really good. If they don't, I don't really want them in my life. I don't care what they think. They're still in their dead-end world with their dead-end negative thoughts, you know, having arguments on Facebook. Good luck to you, mate. Ain't for me.
Can I, where you are right now, if I was like, are all the masks removed?
Not completely. This, I think it was always therapy. The stuff that you mentioned earlier about Mum. I've hardly ever spoken about that. You know, very couple of, you know, maybe ex-partners or pals that I had. I'm still in touch with a couple of pals that I knew, you know, in primary school that saw, you know, what had gone on. But by the main, yes. I still have to be happy and joyous down the soul at events when I'm knackered. And actually, you know, do you realise, you know, the guy that's organising the DJ workshops really just likes putting his slippers on and having a blanket over him, have a nice cup of tea, and, you know, bed by 9:30, or, you know, having a nanny nap in the afternoon. That's also the real me as well. But yeah, I'm a lot happier. I'm a lot more confident in who I am, how I look, how I present myself, the skills that I've got. Now I understood the dyslexia and the dyspraxia, and there's actually even after, you know, listening to Ed Chin when he was on your show talking about ADHD, I said to him, but you've got like a proper grown-up job. You're a proper grown-up. How can you struggle? And then we had some conversations. He said, oh, I'm not. But I said, yeah, it's like finance, and that's all stuff I don't understand. Well, actually, if you can struggle with it, it almost, you know, the benefit of listening to this podcast was I learnt from somebody else's story. Oh, okay, maybe I'm allowed to do that as well.
Love that.
So, yeah, there's wisdom in the story, isn't there?
Yeah, it is. It's something so powerful. One of the reasons I love doing it so much is I get to spend these amazing time speaking to people like yourself, and people just being open, honest, and authentic about themselves, and sharing that story. And like you said, everyone has got, as the saying goes, everyone's got a story to tell.
Yeah.
But they really have, and someone will take something from that story, whatever that looks like. And I mean, your one is something very powerful, mate. And thank you for being so open with us today with so much. I'm keen. We're sort of coming towards the end. So there's a couple of things I just sort of keen to touch on. We've obviously talked about the sort of relationship with failure, which certainly seems like there's been a shift for you, and in that sense, which is great. I think but the flip side to that, what then does success look like to you? How do you measure, I guess, success from, especially, I guess, from something that you do that has such an impact and stuff? But do you see yourself as a successful person, and how do you measure it?
If I sit down and measure, then I can do. You know, we did our social impact report. So rather than just saying, oh, we did X amount of events and X amount of people turned up, what else? What was the legacy, the other thing? So that was the beauty of working for, you know, AP. I got to understand more about social impact reporting and work with charities and B Corps and understand all these different metrics that you can use. So going through the report and going, well, we had over 10,000 people through the door. You know, our volunteers have given, I think it's something like 11,000 hours of volunteer time. That's £250,000 if you wanted to buy it on the open market. And they've given that through the power of the story and what we've created. That is an incredible statistic. Or the fact that, you know, we do the measurements at the end of an event. 5 very quick questions. How lonely were you at the start? How happy are you at the end? And there's something like a 95% success rate with the dads going, I'm really glad I found somewhere where I've got people to get it, or I feel less lonely. Personally, I still struggle with my own level of success because I always want more, just as I said.
But what is then that wanting more? Is your wanting more financially based, or is it something
probably
greater
more?
than that?
Probably a bit of everything. I need the financial security. So I'd still like a nice house and be able to travel. You know, I live on a very keen budget, you know, but I am a lot more fortunate than so many other people. So I'm like, okay, well, I haven't got the nice car, I haven't got the big screen TV, but don't really need it. You know, I can't drive anyway. And all of those. Success for me would be to live longer than my dad did. You know, he died, I think he was 73 years old. And I think the stress and the bad habits related to the stress, you know, maybe having one too many pints and smoking and those sort of things. So I don't drink, I don't smoke. You know, I take care of myself a lot more. I invest in my relationships a lot more as well. That's really successful. You know, people say, oh, you know, you must be a great dad. I'm all right. I'm still trying, I'm still learning, you know, but I'm maybe better than the generations before. Just like you're saying, you know, with your kids and the stuff you're learning, you know, you're probably better at handling it than maybe your dad or your granddad was or would be. So that's a success. Yeah, I don't need the shiny things in life. Doesn't really interest me, but it's sometimes nice, especially at the like downstairs. You know, we've got 100 people at a play date. You can just sit back and go, right, a couple of hours ago, these people are all strangers, but now look at them. They're pals. They're having conversations. They're playing. They're being daft, and nobody's judging. Ooh. Or, you know, getting an email from a dad in Australia and going, I saw this and it really, this was me. Wow. That's a measure of success. But yeah, do I want to live on a fancy desert island somewhere? Maybe. let's be honest.
And there's nothing wrong. Look, I guess that I sort of talk about it within the narrative that I guess that there's something wrong with actually wanting that, because I'm that person who and that's why I have to check in with myself. I do want them nice things, but I think it's being conscious. The key is to be conscious of the fact that those shiny things and that does not give you fulfillment or contentment and happiness.
It's understanding why you want the shiny things. What will they add to you? So when people come in, my telly's about that big. You know, well, I haven't got a big screen. Bloke on his own. Because I don't really watch it, and it's a bit pointless. But yeah, it's the Simon Sinek thing. You know, the power of why. Why do I need those shiny? What will it actually improve? Will it make us happy? Will it do? Okay, well, actually, if we have got a faster car, I can get the kids to school a bit quicker. That will save a lot less argument. That's a good reason to have it. But if I've got something to show off about, maybe that's not so important. You know,
because for me, listen, like you said, there must be that sort of euphoria moment where you've created that space and you look on. Hear us on the radio on Saturday and with volunteers talking about the impact and what it's given us, and then you look round, you 100 dads there with all their kids, and that moment of euphoria where you look back, I've created this space, and I've created something.
Still really hasn't happened, because I still am driven for more, because for every 100 people that's in a space, there's another 10,000, 100,000 that are struggling.
What's the statistic?
Yeah, 6 million dads,
6
but that
million
doesn't count stepdads, granddads, foster carers. So there's add another million to that, and you know, I want to change this narrative. People assume that it's just a bunch of angry single dads complaining, and it really isn't. It's people that are happily married, people that are co-parent. We've got dads that have full-time custody, different backgrounds, and it really is that. I'm saying that community of people. Those three letters DAD. There's an intrinsic thread that goes right away. So it doesn't matter. Say what's in your bank balance, whatever. Do you want to enjoy this crazy ride of fatherhood? Do you want to be better? Do you want to maybe learn some stuff? Do you want access to a few more quality dad jokes, or even if somebody to go? Yeah, we have things like pop up in a WhatsApp. Oh, I want to go and see this gig, but I've got nobody to go with. You do now. Or I want to go to five-a-side, or the sea swimming and stuff like that, or a bit scared of going sea swimming. It's a bit out of my comfort zone. Well, actually, there's quite a few lads that do it already. Go and join them. I took one lad out last week, Scott, and he hadn't been before, and he just joined me on a Monday morning, and I said, "Oh, give me all the reasons why you shouldn't be here. Bed's warmer, but this is warm, and this is nothing to do." But seeing his reaction after he, we only were in there sort of 5 minutes. I said, I've done it. Yeah. And it's that power of that community, that sort of gently jostling.
I'm going to hold your hand and help you through this.
Exactly. And it's a lot of good fun, and you'll get bitten by the bug, and then maybe you'll inspire somebody else.
To do it.
You're giving you that confidence. So, success. What does it look like from an organisation? I want chapters all over the world. I want chapters on the moon. You know what I mean?
And why not?
And why not? Because there are.
So is that the future for you? Is that what the future holds? Like, I'm all in full time.
I genuinely still don't know what I think it's 10 clubs by the end of the year. That's the target that I've been given. They're going to be a range of different clubs in very different locations with very different partnerships. So, we've got this great partnership with Plus X. There's a partnership over there with that organisation, partnership with large corporates, football clubs. It differs. So it won't just be, here's a play date, bing, 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 bing. Because the other thing for a non-profit, you rely on charitable funding. Right, and that becomes harder and harder to get hold of. So I know there's a business here. Okay, there's a great revenue because we can work with local authorities. We can work with hospitals. That funding has to be spent. It can come our way, but rather than spending it on big screen tellies and fancy cars, we put it back straight into the community. So another dad that maybe is struggling or can't even afford to come to a play, don't worry. Well, I'm a bit older than you, but there was a thing that caught my memories the other day. I had a group of pals in primary school, right, and we were really, really tight. But at dinner times, they had to sit on a different table because they got free school meals. Right, you imagine a stigma, but that's just kind of how it was there. And that's nuts in this day and age, but that's just the poor kids sat over there at lunchtime. I fundamentally don't agree with that in so many different ways. It's like you can, doesn't matter how long, you can come to a Dad the Soul event. There's no questions asked. We'll buy you a pint. We've got a cup of tea. There's no, you go to normal family events and they're trying to sell you something else, for the kids. And then suddenly you've got the kids with loads of pocket money. They're getting all the toys and stuff like that. And the other kids who are having a meltdown and then putting that pressure onto their parents. There's none of that. It really is, you come through the door, you are one of us. That's it. What goes on, outside of your world, is a very different thing.
Love it. Mate, honestly, I knew it would be. It's been so brilliant chatting to you, and thank you for.
It's therapy, isn't it? Mate, Jesus Christ!
Look, for me as much as for you, to be honest. So that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah.
I'm getting it, but honestly, it's been just sharing, being so open with us as well, and sharing what you've created is helping to change the narrative and support people, and coming on here and sharing that as well is certainly a.
That's the important thing. Get over that. It's a bravery because for me being able to put my hand up and go, I really was struggling, or I find that. But then people that wouldn't have gathered that. They'd just see happy, smiley Dan that's working at a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
And it is getting rid of that nonsense and that bollocks.
Yeah.
We're human beings and we're frail.
I think it summed up. I don't know if you sort of thing. I've been following Charlie Maxey and the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. I don't know if you sort of
yes.
But like, one of the brilliant quotes in that is, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" And it was help. And I'm just like, it's that for me.
I watched that at Christmas. That in pieces.
Same.
Yeah. I cry a lot these days. Go to the pictures. I'll have a tear. Watching something sound. Oh, are you crying again?
We better not watch a film together. We'll be in floods of tears together.
Isn't that kind of how I not taught not to cry, but just wouldn't. And that's what girls did.
Of course,
So you ain't cried. Don't be puffed up.
Yeah.
And then it all builds up. But now it's not at a drop of a hat. But pretty much.
We're hard on our sleeves now.
Every time at the cinema, I'll have a tissue handy.
Mate, it's them Disney films, they kill me every time.
Pretty much anything.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to finish quick fire questions. I'm going to chuck these at you. And you sort of, one of these you mentioned it, but one piece of advice you give to your teenage self.
Don't listen to the haters, because those people that are telling you not to do stuff or you're not good enough, look at them now. They ain't doing anything.
Love it. Who's inspired you in your career and why?
Got a little prop.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you can have a lend of that. It's my Bible. It's a guy called Howard Luck Gossage. So, you remember the programme Mad Men?
Yeah.
So, he was one of those on Madison Avenue. Amazing creative brain. But what he did, he shifted all that talent and went to San Francisco and used it for social good.
Wow.
So he would work with, he was inspirational, part of creating like Friends for the Earth. Yeah. He created social media in the 60s by doing amazing creative adverts and getting people to write in to lobby their MPs for change. And I read that book, and it was a weird thing. I was at this media agency. I'd just done a big pitch at Barclaycard HQ in the city to a load of stockbrokers, and my boss going, "Oh, you went really, really well." Blah blah blah. I was thinking, I hate all those people. It's that I've sold out, and it's about changing the world is the only fit job for a grown man.
Love that.
So yeah, it's Howard Luck. People need to know him,
mate.
You see, it's been well funded.
That's a great one. We're in. Thank you. Well, I'm assuming the next question. This could be the answer to the next question as well. Can you recommend a book or a podcast?
It probably would be this, or this wonderful podcast. I say from a conversation you had with Ed Chin a few months ago. Actually, really spurred me on to go and get my own diagnosis, and that would be another thing where maybe I wasn't confident about doing it because again that stigma attached to it, where didn't really happen in my day. It was just a naughty kid. Always a kid that had too much orange squash. But it's the power of those conversations. It really is.
Amazing. Your one rule for living a fulfilled life?
One rule? That's a toughie. Again, everything I'd say sound like a cliche, but it really is try to be kind.
I love that, mate. Listen, what a brilliant way to finish. It's been a brilliant conversation.
It's been emotional, as they say, hasn't it?
It's been emotional, but honestly, you've created something really special.
Thank you, and you're very much part of it. It's not me. It's the rest of the boys, which need a massive shout out because even like the play date here on Saturday, I didn't have to come. Because it's all here, it's all set up. Everybody's much more competent than I am. So let them do that, and then I can have a bit of downtime rather than racing here, there, and again every weekend. But I've got an amazing team. I don't need to be here. I can go and focus on.
You've created something, you've created something where people want to be part of. And again, back to the whole culture piece, whether it's a company, whatever it is that it looks like that's the bloodline of a thing. If you create a culture within a movement like you have done, people want to be part of it. People want to come and join. People want to come and be part of it. Well, love me no jumper. Love this one. Yeah. But mate, it's amazing. And listen, I wish it continued growth, success, and I feel honoured to play a small part in that as well, and be on board with you. So
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. So I know we've been discussing this for a long time. So now to have the opportunity to come down, and even the questions that you popped over, I thought, how do I handle that? Which mask do I wear? So, no, I don't have to. I can just do that, and nobody's going to laugh. Nobody's going to take the mickey, and it doesn't matter. And even if they did, well,
mate, thank you for removing the mask today, and like I say,
still quite good looking underneath it, aren't I?
Mate, very much so, very much so. And that, as they say, sir, is a wrap.
Thank you.
This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions.